Dear students, in this session we are going to cover a important topic in the Python, that is file handling in Python. As part of this topic, we are going to cover how to create a file, how to read the data from the file, and how to write the data into the file. And after that we are going to see some more operations like append operations. Now, what is file handling actually? What is the need of this? Assume that we have a program and we executed the code. Assume that that is to find sum of the two numbers. When we execute that code, it prompts the user to enter two numbers, right? I entered two numbers and we will get the output. Sum of the two numbers is something. Suppose I enter 10 comma 20, the output is sum of 10 comma 20 is 30. But after 5 days or after 1 day, after 1 month, can I see the input values what I given to that code? Obviously no, because the values what we are given in the form of the input will be stored in variables and the values are stored in the RAM. As RAM is a temporary memory, we cannot get that input values. That is the problem with this type of the implementation. Now, if you want to store that the value, what is the value you have given in the form of the input to your program, if you want to store that, you can store it permanently with help of the concept files. With help of the files concept, we can store the data permanently. Okay. Then, how to implement this files concept in Python? So, generally while we are working with the files concept, we may implement this type of the functions or actions. What are those? Create the file, read the data from the file, write the data into the file, update the data. These are the general operations what will implement in the files concept. Now, we have two types of the files, those are text files and binary files. How can we understand these two? Text file is nothing but human can easily understand that human readable format, .txt file or .doc file, .ppt file, all these are the text files, human can easily understand that. And the second category of the files are binary files. By the name you can understand binary in the form of the binary digits, zeros and ones only. Machine can understand that type of the formats. For example, if you give MP3 and any image file like JPG format, that will be stored in the form of binary. We cannot understand, human cannot understand that. That category is binary files. Simple example, see this is the text file. Assume that the name of the text file is student.txt, a simple text file created with help of the notepad. The extension is .txt. And assume that the content we have in that file is name Ramesh, marks 85. This is a simple example for the text file. And what type of the operations we can do with help of this text file? We can open the file, obviously, right? We can open any file and we can read the data and we can write the data into that file. Append means add any extra data at the end of the existing data. We can implement that operation too, and close the opened file. Generally, these are the operations we can do with help of any file. Now, the point is how to implement this, how to create the file, how to add the data, how to read the data from the file, what is the code we need to write, that is the important point here. First step, while you are working with any files concept, we need to open the file. Then how to open the file, how to write the code for that. See here, first we need to use any file object, that is identifier concept. You can give any name as per your requirement. In this example, I am using the name file underscore object. This is the file object. Assignment open. Open is a predefined function that is used to open a file. Then this predefined function has two parameters here. First parameter is used to indicate file name, with which file you want to work. You need to write that file name here and within the double quotation marks. because that file name is treated as a string data type, you must write that within the double quotes or single quotes to are valid, comma, opening mode. Opening mode means what type of the actions you want to do, that is generally meaning of the word mode. Okay, in which mode you want to open, might be read mode, write mode. What is the mode, what is read, what is write, I will cover later on, but as of now I am covering what is open and how to write the code to open. For example, for this syntax, F assignment, what is F here? File object. Assignment, open is a predefined function name. What is the file you want to open? Data.txt, that is a file name. I want to open that file. And why you are opening that file? Because I want to read the data from that file. That is why you need to write R here, just lowercase r. R indicates read mode, mode of the file is read. For that you need to write R within the single quote or double quote. So, this is how to open a file in the read mode example. Now, as of now we covered the mode. We have the different type of the modes, not only read. So, different type of the modes and different type of the characters we use in the code are. If we use R, the meaning is read mode. We are trying to opening a file in the read mode. That is the meaning if you write R as a second argument in the open predefined function. If you write W, the meaning is write mode. You can easily remember that first character. A, append mode. These are the very popular and basic types of the modes, R, W, A, read, write, append. Other than those, we have some advanced modes also, like R plus. We can implement read operations and read mode related properties, plus write operation also is allowed. Then W plus, it follow strictly all the rules about the write mode. Every mode has its own rules. Okay, we will cover that rules in the coming slides. Plus read operation also allowed. For that we need to write W plus. So, these are the different modes and meaning of those means. Now, let me implement read mode first, and let me tell you some more important points about the read mode. As the name suggests, read mode is used to read the content, read the data from the existing file. But here very important point is that file must be existed. If the file is not existed, that code raises an error. Okay. Let me give a simple example. Suppose I want to read a notebook, but there is no data in the notebook. How can you read that book? Right? In the same way, whenever you want to open any file in the read mode, that file must be existed. Then how to implement this? What is the code we need to write to implement this read operation? See the code. First step, open the file in the read mode. Then what is the code we need to write for that? Object name F. In this example, I am using F. If you want to use any FP or any other name, that is also valid. F assignment, open is a predefined function. You must write open in the lowercase letters only. You must write as it is. You are not supposed to change the name. Open, parenthesis, it has two arguments. First argument is file name. What is the file you want to open? You need to write that file name. Assume that I want to open a file, that file name is data.txt. I want to open that file in read mode, comma, within the double quotation R, read mode. I want to read the data from that file. Okay. Now, the content of the data.txt is welcome. Just assume I have a file, in that the content I have is welcome, simple text. Okay. Now, open the file in the read mode, f.read. Observe here in the right hand side of the assignment operator, I am using one more predefined method, read. Read is a predefined method, as the name you can understand, that is used to read the content from a file. From which file you want to read? F. F is pointing to the data.txt. So, the meaning is what is the file being referenced by the F object, from that file the content will be read. That is the meaning of f.read. And whatever the content will be read with help of this code will be assigned to the object. That object name is content. This is identifier, you can use any name here, that is not predefined. Now, print content, print is a output statement, whatever the content we already read with help of the fread function, that will be printed on the screen. Now, f dot close, this is very good habit. Whatever the files you opened in your project or in your application, those must be closed. Okay. This is just like after reading your book, you must close your book now, because to avoid the damage of the pages. In the same way, whatever the files you opened to work with, after completion of that work, you must close that opened file. Then how to close that file? Just object name dot close method. See, f dot close, that opened file will be closed. Now, if you execute this code, after executing this code, the output you are getting is welcome. How we are getting this welcome? Because that is the content we have in the file data.txt. What is the overall purpose of this code? I want to create a file in the read mode. The mode is read, that is why the file is opened in the read mode. Whatever the content you have in the file, that will be read and printed on the screen. That is the concept about this code. Next mode is write mode. Write mode, nothing but writing the data into the file. Creates a new file if file is not exists. This is very important point. In the read mode, I covered that whenever you are writing a file name, if the file is not existed, that code raises an error in the read mode. But coming to the write mode, if that file is not existed, that file will be created with that name. That is very important difference you must understand here when compare with read and write mode. Creates a new file if that file is not exists. Point 1. Second important point is, suppose if you have some data in that existed file, that existed data will be erased. That existed data will be erased and that file will be opened as a new file in the memory whenever you are working with write mode. These 2 points you must remember. First point is, if the file is not existed, that file is created with the name. Second point is, if your file has any data, that will be erased and that file will be opened as a new file in the memory or in the buffer internally. Those are the 2 important points about the write mode. Okay. Then how to implement this? How to write the code to implement write mode? See, object name, assignment, open. Open is a predefined function, and file name with which you want to work, data.txt, comma, in which mode you want to open this. Currently we are discussing about write mode, so that is why you must write W here, important point, and assume that I have a file data.txt and the content we have in that is welcome. Then f.write, here I am using one more predefined function, that function name is write, f.write. The purpose of the write function is to write some data into the file. What is the data you want to write into the file? You need to write within the double quotation marks. As per this example, I want to write the data hello. I want to write the data hello into the file data.txt. That is the meaning of this code. After implementing the any code, you must close it. Just now we covered f.close. Now try to understand this one. We have the text welcome in the data.txt file. After executing that, as I covered just now, the existing data will be erased. So the data we have in the existing file is welcome na, that will be erased. And what is the text we have written in the write function? Hello. So that hello will be stored in the file. That is why after executing this code, if you open data.txt file, in that you may observe hello. You may not observe the welcome because the welcome is erased. So that is how to implement write mode. Next, third important mode is append mode. The meaning of the append is adding the data at the end of the existing data. Just now we covered in the write mode. Whenever you try to opening any file, the existing data will be erased. That is the problem with write mode. But assume that I have one requirement, I do not want to lose the existing data. I want to add any extra data at the ending of the existing data. That is my requirement. So, to implement this type of the requirement, you can use the mode append mode. That append mode is indicated with the character A, lowercase letter a. Now, see, adds the data at the end of the existing data, and in this mode the existing data is safe because that will not be erased. Now, how to implement this? How to write the code? See, opening a file. While opening a file, we need to write file name, and this is important in this example. A indicates we are opening a file in the appending mode. What is the file I want to open? Data.txt, and assume that the content we have in the data.txt is welcome. Okay. Now, with help of the write function, I want to write the data into the file. What is the data I want to write into that file is this line is added later. I want to add that line. If you want to write any other text, instead of this you can write any text, but simply I want to add this line. The line is, this line is added later, just I want to add the text. After that I want to close that opened file. Now, after executing this code, just open the data.txt. When you open that file, you can observe the content the file has is welcome. Observe here, very important point, the existing data will not be erased, and to that existing data we are adding one extra line also. This is the advantage of the appending mode. Okay. Now, see one more example how to read the data from a file line by line. Assume we have a file data.txt. In that the content we have Python programming in line 1, second line artificial intelligence. Assume that we have this content in the data.txt file. Okay, you must keep ready this file with you before executing this code. Now, write this code. If assignment open the file name, our file name is data.txt in this example, and I am opening that file in the read mode. That is why I am writing R here, as I covered already. Now, see, I am writing for loop here for line in f. The meaning of this is f is an object that giving the reference to the file, and at each and every iteration the line will be read in the line variable. For each and every iteration a line will be read. In simple terms, first iteration first line will be stored in the line variable. In the second iteration second line will be stored in the line variable. If you have the third line, third will be stored in the third iteration, and so on. So, that is the meaning of this for loop. Okay. For line, in is a keyword, line is a identifier. You can use any name here, but in is a keyword. You should not change that. You must use as it is, in and f. This is object name. What is the object name you are using here? You must use that object name here. And print line, what is the content read with help of this code, that will be printed on the screen as the output of this code. Then I want to close that opened file. For that we are writing close function. So, this is the content, and after executing this you will get this type of the output. See, whatever the data you have in the file, the same content will be displayed on the screen. So, at the runtime your code is connecting to that file, and whatever the data in that file will be read, and the data will be printed on the screen. These are the actions implemented with help of this code. Okay. And here we are implementing line by line implementation. Line by line we are reading the data. You may have the doubt, suppose why do we read the data line by line? Can we read the entire data at a time? Yes, obviously we have that type of the functions also. Let me tell you about that. F.read, this reads the entire file at a time. okay, not line by line, complete the data, whatever the data, how many lines you have, the complete content of your file will be read at a time. For that we use f dot read. F dot read line, this is used to read one line at a time. Just now we implemented a read line. By the name you can understand, it is used to read one line at a time, read line. Multiple lines if you want to read, you can go for the another function called read lines. Read lines is a predefined function that is used to read a certain number of the lines at a time. You need to pass that value as a parameter for this function. Suppose I want to read 3 lines. Now you need to write 3 in the parenthesis, like that. Next important implementation is with statement. With statement is a best practice while you are developing any project. The important of the with statement is you no need to write the close statement. Sometimes you may forget to write the close statement. Even though if you forget, no any security problems will be happen to your file if you write with statement. Now see the code how to implement this. With is a keyword, you must write within the lowercase letters only, all are in the lowercase letters. Open is a predefined function, and the file with which you want to work, comma, and mode, in which mode you want to work with that file. As of now already we implemented this, but what's new here, this is the new point. As is a keyword, as f, nothing but whatever the reference we are giving to that file we need to write here as f. Then print f dot read, already we covered, read is a method that is used to read the content from the file. So the content of the file will be printed on the screen. So in this case observe here, I am not writing closing statement. In the previous code I have shown to you f dot close is compulsory, but here I am not writing that. Even though we are not writing that, this will be executed safely and no any memory issues will be raised because I am using with. That is the importance of the with. Now why closing a file is important? As I said already, closing file is important several times, but why that is important? Saves the data properly. Suppose you implemented some actions, if you are not closing that file, still that is open in the memory, some manipulations might be happened to that file. Your data may not be saved properly. That is why after completion of your work you must close that file. Then freeze the memory. Assume that you are working with 10 files, you opened 10 files, 10 files will be opened in the buffer, but you are not closing that, unnecessarily the memory is wasted. That is why if you want to use memory in the optimized way, you must close the opened files. Prevents the data corruption. As I said already, if your file is already open, that might be chance for the manipulation also. That is why you must close it. In simple terms, we can say that if you forget to close the opened file, that is unsafe to your data of your file. Next, as of now we covered how to open a file, read the data, write the data and append mode, and without close also we can write with help of the with statement. Now before opening a file, I want to know whether the file is exist or not, because after opening that we may implement some actions, but before that I want to know, I want to get the confirmation whether the file is available or not. For that we can use this code, import OS, OS stands for operating system here. We can import the library, that is operating system library, the name is OS, and see this highlighted code, this is important in this program. If os dot path dot exists, the meaning of this is, in this a given particular path, whether this file is existed or not, that will be checked with help of this if statement. This if statement returns true if the file is existed. Okay, this returns true, the meaning is the file is exist. So in this case I want to give the message to the user, print file exist. I want to give the message to the user, then user get confirmed, yes, the file is exist. If this is false, the meaning is this file is not existed in the given path. In that case it returns false, the entire statement value becomes false. Whenever the if statement becomes false, this statement will be skipped, else only will be executed. Now, what is the statement I have written here? Print file not found. So, if the file is not found, I want to display the same message to the user also, file not found. So, this is the code which is useful to check whether a given file is exist or not before starting your actions. See the implementation. Student marks example. I want to open a file. The file name is marks.txt and I want to open the file in the write mode. After opening that, I want to write the data like student name Ravi and marks 80. In the same way, second student name is Sita and 90 marks, and I want to close that. This is write operation. Now, implement the read operation also within the same code. Open marks.txt in the read mode, I am writing R, and read function to read the content. Already we have the content now, we have stored this with help of the write function, and the content will be read and I want to close that. So, whatever the data we have written, the same content will be displayed as the output of this code. So, here we are implementing write and read mode. So, this is about files concept. So, let me summarize what we cover here. So, what is the use of the file is? In simple terms, if you want to save the data permanently, you can go for the files concept. Before the files concept, we discussed one thing, that is about the variables. If you store the data in the variables in the program, when you shut down the systems, the data will be lost. You may not get the data. But if you use the files concept, whatever the data you have given to the code in the form of the input, that will be saved permanently. After 1 day, after 1 week, after 1 month, whenever you want to retrieve that, you can easily retrieve that with help of the read operation. Now, coming to the operations we implemented in the files concept are how to open the file, how to read, write, append. These are the operations we can perform. Then we covered modes also. Mode is nothing but what type of the action you want to do with the file, and the modes we covered are read mode, write mode, append mode. Read mode is nothing but if you want to read the existed data, we can use read mode. In that case, the file must be existed, otherwise the code raises an error. Write mode is used to store the data into the file. The character we used for that is W. And in this case, the file is not existed. If the file is not exist, a new file is created with the name, and if the existed data is erased automatically in the write mode. Third mode is append mode. In the append mode, the existed data will not be erased, and the given data will be added at the end of the existing data. And next we covered with statement. Without writing the close also, we can write the code with help of the with keyword. With keyword is used to develop the code without writing the close statement. And what is the use of the close statement? To prevent the memory leaks and to save your data properly, we must use close statement. So, this is about files and files handling concept. Thank you.